Thanks. Hey, welcome to Thru Port Collective. We've made it. Yeah, it's been one of those weeks, hasn't it? It's been Tim's been sick, and I've been dealing with my stuff. But if you're wondering what's going on with my face, no, it kind of always looks like that. But I like clean ran into the side of a door yesterday, and it was not fun. So I've got this gash on my forehead. But anyways, we're on to better things here, and again, welcome. Glad to see everybody in the chat. If you get a second, maybe before you forget and run off, hit the like button. And we're going to be talking a little bit about turning over gear, and so we'll get to that in a minute. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. I got a new piece of equipment here that showed up that I've been waiting for like 4 years for, but it's here. It's the Osmos.
Yes.
Check it out. It's pretty cool.
Ooh la la.
Ah, the Osmos.
There it is.
So, just in case of nobody, I don't know, I can't imagine many keyboard players would not know what this is now, or at least those that would watch our show. But maybe if there's somebody else, what is the Osmos and what's so special about it?
It's it's made by Expressive E, so the same company that makes like the Touche, and I can't remember what else they make. The Touche is kind of the other thing that I remember from them. But it's a new keybed design for MPE and polyphonic aftertouch. The keys on here they're elongated. It's probably hard to tell here, but they kind of go all the way back to here, and you can wiggle these, and you get vibrato and some other things. And there's a couple of stages of aftertouch when you push down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a unique keybed, basically.
So there's been some other kind of keybeds that have been moving forward that have like the Raleigh, and I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that have had some unique features. But this one is kind of in its niche in that it still feels like a synth keyboard.
Right. It plays it's different, obviously, but it's as close as you're going to get with this kind of expression on a device like this, but more natural feeling to play than I'd say than like a Rolly.
Yeah, or like
Those-
the Macmillan. What's that thing called? It has like kind of spongy keys, not like the Raleigh, but it's it's a little bit. It's like between the Raleigh and this, where
Oh,
it
okay.
has a soft keys that you can kind of do the same MP3 MPE type stuff on it.
Yeah. And this thing uses the what's it called, Tim? I always say it wrong. Harkin.
The Hawking, yeah, that's the
Yeah, that's the synth engine that's in here. And that's a separate company, I believe, right? I'm pretty sure that's not an Expressive.
yeah, because they make their keyboard is another kind of cool multi-expressive touch keyboard. That's
It's like
different.
isn't it like a weird box with like almost like looks like cloth on it?
Yeah, and you can get like I don't know. There's definitely like larger key count versions of it. Like I don't know if it's 88, but there's some pretty big full size keyboards with those. Yeah, and so they do a different approach. So that I guess basically that's just for the implementation of all the good MPE stuff ready to go for you there with the Osmos using
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So instead of having to, I mean, you can use this with third-party software or other instruments. I'm excited to try it with the Kyra because I can
Ah,
do polyphonic aftertouch as well. But the sound engine in this is a little odd in that you need to have Max installed, and the editor is like a Max patch. So I tried kind of setting it up when I first got this. I activated it because you have to. Well, I had to update the firmware, and you have to get this little activation code and go to the Expressive E site. and you download the editor. I couldn't figure out how to get it to work off rip. So, but I just went through some of the presets. But I think that's a mistake. Like they should really develop like a full application for this thing instead of relying on Macs. That's a little odd, I think. But other than that, this thing's super cool.
Yeah, I'm real curious to hear about how you get along with it. Well, and that's going to tie into not that we're jumping there now, but that's definitely going to tie into our subject.
Yeah.
You know, because it's some things you just don't know how you're going to get on with until you've lived with them for a couple of months or something. You know, I hate to say something like girlfriends, but you know, but you know, there's a test period.
Aaron's asking who is Max. Well, Max is actually an application developed by Cycling 74, and it's like a programmable. It's like a program interface. How do I say it? Like it's like a development environment that you can create things in it. There's a version of it called Max for Live that works with Ableton Live specifically. So you'll see people develop like instruments or effects, other things like that using it as well. So for whatever reason, though, they decided to use that for their editor of the Hawken sound engine, which I think is really weird to do that, but it complicates it a little more.
It does. Well, I remember what Jamie Morden, our friend Jamie Morden, he got a hold of one of those of the Osmos, and he had a difficult time getting it to work as well.
Yeah,
and I think he ended up using some other software that had MP. It might have been the Hawken. No, that's what it comes with. No, but it might have been. What did he? Oh, the Rolly. He used the Rolly software.
Oh, he did.
And that's how he ended up making it work. So it's clearly not very friendly to get up and going on, and that's the first thing you want somebody to do, right? Is feel like, all right, I'm at the playground now. I can, let me be on the slide and hop on the swing, and like, come on, dude, like don't lock me out.
There's only, I guess, I haven't dug into this too deep, really. I literally just kind of went through some presets after I couldn't figure out how to get the editor to work after a few minutes. But from what I understand, the encoders on here, you can't really dive deep into the synthesis without the editor. So you can make some adjustments to patches, but I think you need the editor to do full. Like if you were going to make custom patches, you need to use that editor.
So Wagyu is saying, you can use the Osmos with any MPE software, so Rolly, Equator, or whatever, fine. So, software bit aside, how does it feel to play?
It feels super cool. It's super cool. It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to definitely be using this quite a bit.
Well, it's been a long road. I'm glad you finally got it.
Yeah. Well, so I ordered this in 2019, December of 2019. So, and it got here on Monday. That's a little bit of a wait.
That's amazing. I can't believe they took that long to bring that about.
I was like, is this even ever going to happen? But I'm glad they kept working on it and actually put it out. So it's super cool.
I didn't mention it last week, but my latest gear acquisition is kind of right there, and it's a 1968, not a reissue of anything. It's a 1968 Fender Bandmaster. It's about a 40-watt, vacuum tube, just Fender amp, and I've had a bunch of these Bandmasters and Bassmans, anything from the 60s. Like I've probably had just a ton of different old Fender amps, and I really love the sound of them. They're great, and just like vintage synthesizers, I mean, these things have been going up in price a lot, and so it used to be just certain models were really expensive, and things like Bandmasters and Bassmans were more plentiful, and you could get them pretty cheap. And just over the years, I ended up selling them off, and I actually still have a 66, I think, Bassman that's up in the closet that I got to finish repairing. But I've loved these amps, and I've had them, I mean, all almost to the beginning, because you would find these cheap in the 90s, and they sounded a lot better than what was in the stores, and you could pick them up pretty cheap. And so as time passes, things go up in money. You sell stuff off, and you just and we'll talk about that more. But I was always kind of bummed because I never had kept one of them. There was always something else that I needed, and I just didn't need to put out the money. But I came across one that was in just fantastic condition, and it had already been serviced, and so all the things I would normally have to open it up to do, change out the electrolytics, and all the stuff like the ticking tremolo and stuff like that, already done, immaculate condition. Great workmanship inside, and found it for pretty cheap. And so it's like I did something stupid, and I saw it in the morning. I was like, I don't need it, and it's cheap, but it's not something that I need. And then right before I was going to bed, I was like, you idiot, you're never going to get one for this price again. And so I pulled out my app and I better buy this right now. And I'm really glad I did. I'm really glad I did. And so the funny thing is that I have a Top Hat 212 cabinet, vintage 30 speakers. That might not mean anything to you two, but for the other guitarists, I love that cabinet. It sounds great. And I realized why I sold my last Bandmaster, because it sounds terrible through that setup. But my other amps sound fantastic through it. And I've got my old 1965 Standell amplifier with it's got Jensen's, two 10-inch Jensen's in its cab. I'm like, well, that's Jensen C10Rs. That would be what, similar to what would be used in Fender amps. They used Jensen's in that era. And so I plugged it into that thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I'm so glad that I bought it, because I've been trying to, there's things that I like and I want, and there's things that you need, and to try to weigh those things. And this is one time where I was like, okay, I just need to do this. And once I was relieved that thank you for not being an idiot and just letting that thing pass, because I don't think I'll have, I don't think I'll be wanting to pay those kind of vintage prices anymore. So I'm glad I've got one at least. Well, I have also a 78 Princeton. But that's a much smaller amp, so I was happy about that. That was a couple of weeks ago.
Wow, it's that's a point, isn't it? It's good to know when you get shell shocked, I guess is where I'm going with that, and you're like, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. There's something I really want, but I can't do that. And you get used to so used to saying that, and then when something comes up that really is a good opportunity, for the first time, and you realize, this is probably my last really good chance, that old voice still pops back in saying, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And then it's like then you have the realization, you're like, oh, no, wait, now is the time. So it's a good thing that, that other voice came back in and broke through, and you went and got it,
And it's a good feeling, because sometimes, you buy stuff and you regret it, and you're like,
right.
This is not bringing me happiness. But, when I walk into this room and I see that old amp there, I'm like, man, I'm glad I got it. It just brings me joy to play through it. I love it. So it was good. That was a good one.
Definitely. That's cool.
Well, let me pop this up. There's all sorts of stuff happening and new, but we'll tackle, oops. Hey, what's going on here? Hold on here. They changed my buttons. Okay.
What the?
I think we got it here.
What the?
Yeah, so a little bit of news before we dive in. Late last night, Roland announced that they updated 3 of their soft synthesizers, the Jupiter 4, Juno 106, and Jupiter 8, to version 2. All 3 of these from the legendary ACB models of synthesizers. So got some new features on here. So first of all, they got new GUIs, which was good. You can see it looks a little bit different. Let's see if I can why it's not letting me. There we go. So they got this new top panel that's a little bit different, view meters, and you can already see that the preset system is going to be looking a little bit different.
Yeah,
here.
that looks way better.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it is way better. So here is the browse. That's the edit screen that you saw before, and this is the browse screen, where it gives you a few parameters that you can just real quickly adjust, but they've kind of gone to the Xenology style preset system, which, to be honest, is a lot better. And I'm really happy about this change because that made using the ACB and DCB synthesizers a nightmare. And, you know, I don't really like a lot of their patches, but I like some of the original ones from the synthesizers from the 80s. You know, some of those classic sounds. And it's nice to be able to go and rate stuff and kind of sort them by stuff you've rated or created. But what do you guys think of all all this stuff? Oh, one
Marshall?
more thing, a big thing that I forgot to mention on here. Let me pull it back up here. Sorry. I don't think you can see on this picture, but each of these synthesizers have gotten a condition knob. Or wait, was it condition? No, that was an old knob, right? It's what's it called? Somebody in the chat probably knows. I played with it already today, but circuit mod. There it is.
Oh, that's cool.
So it still has the condition knob, which simulates the aging of the synthesizer, which, I don't know, was okay, but it wasn't that great. But the circuit mod is a to me, more interesting knob, and it has a series of things that it does. It's like it's a macro control for things like envelope timing. So as you turn it up, things get a little bit off from one another as they do in analog synthesizers.
That I love.
Yeah.
That's like super handy right there. It's super interesting because if you want to do something pretty straight ahead in one of these great rolling kind of sounds, that's great. But what if you want to like circuit bend it in a little bit and have something right there? That's brilliant. That's a great idea. That's exciting to me. I like that. That makes me curious. I don't have any virtual instruments that are Roland based. I don't have a single one. It's interesting. It's just kind of the way it's panned out because most of what I have anyway is hardware. Aside from your basic stuff, your go-to stuff like Omnisphere and whatever of that nature.
Yeah, I've been a Rolling Cloud subscriber since this came out, which is cool actually because every year I think I get 2 plugins that I get to add as permanent licenses. Somehow like I got in on that where they were doing that because they don't do that anymore. But I saw this briefly the other night when you posted this, Cryss, but I hadn't really looked into what changes they made. So I'll be interested to give these a whirl. I get a little nervous sometimes when they go and do updates like this, though, because I'm wondering if it's gonna have if it's gonna upgrade and it'll replace the old one, or if you can have both, or if there's gonna be compatibility issues, or like because sometimes when they do these updates, I know this happened to me with Arturia stuff all the time. They do an update and I'd go back and open an old project which used like the Mini Moog V or one of their soft synth instruments, and it would have changed the patches and like it didn't sound right and it messed up stuff like that sometimes. So I'm hoping that's not an issue with these. That's
I think with Arturia, they're just when they make a major change, it just becomes a separate plugin now, which is nice because then you can still open up if you have the older one on your system, you can still open it up now, but you can. So like I have the CS80 V3 and V4, and I can open up separately in the same project. And with these, they haven't broken any compatibility. So if you open up, at least not to my knowledge, but if you open up a patch that has been created before this V2 version, it's exactly the same except that they have what's it called again? Circuit mod all the way down.
Yeah, just as long as they didn't make any big changes to the sound engine to where
Yeah.
the patches sound different.
Right.
So that's what I'm worried about whenever I with any of these plugins.
Mhm.
Magus was saying the same kind of thing, right? But I guess Arturia lets you keep the old ones installed.
Yeah.
I don't
Mhm.
I don't remember now, but I have the Arturia V collection, but it's like version 4, and I haven't
Oh.
updated it, so I don't know for sure if they let you keep the old ones or not.
Yeah, I got in on version 6, and so some of them again that I've had on this computer since then, or before I updating to whatever the latest version is, 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps both of them on there. So their newer plugins, the newer Arturia ones, are really great. They sound remarkably better than the old ones. Like when they updated the Jupiter 8 and the Prophet 5, I mean, it was night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, I can
Wow.
understand if you've made songs with the old versions that you'd want to keep that version. But aside from that, there's been some big changes in their modeling that's gotten to be really good.
Yeah.
I checked these out today. Well, I checked mainly the Jupiter 8 and a little bit of the 106. And so I popped them open in a session, and one thing that they need to get on top of is CPU. There's something wrong with it. So when I opened the Jupiter 8, like it maxed out the core that it was on right away, and it was clicking and crackling and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I was like, what the heck? I mean, they usually these Rolling Cloud ones run hot anyway, and it's like this is not working for me, guys, because I changed the session to a buffer size of 128, and I'm on. It's not the newest computer. It's a MacBook Pro with a i9 2.6 gigahertz.
Well, if it's an i9, it should be able to run. Should be able
Yeah,
to run
I
these.
mean, it's not the latest greatest, but it's still a great computer. And so it was killing me on that. And so I thought, well, they've done all this GUI stuff, so I closed the GUI, and all of a sudden it dropped it to like about 50% of a core, which is still really high, but I mean it's usable at least. And
Hmm.
so I noticed that, but even when I had it closed, there was spikes where I kept in Logic. They have a meter where you can watch your cores, the activity on your cores, and it would just spike up to 100 every once in a while, or 75, and it was kind of unpredictable as to what it was doing because it wasn't based on what I was doing on it. But the bummer about it is when I went to check out the circuit mod stuff, I'm I open it up, adjust the knob, have to close it before I start playing, let it die down, and then like, okay, now let me hear what change I made.
Yeah, something's
Obviously,
weird there. That shouldn't happen on a Core i.
yeah,
I mean, I've got an i9 in this machine that's a few years old, and I don't have any issues with Rolling Cloud.
yeah. I imagine they'll get it taken care of, but that was kind of a bummer. But so I pulled up an original patch, which was negative pluck from the original factory patch of the Jupiter 8. So I pulled open the Rolling Cloud one. I pulled open the Tals, whatever they call J8 or whatever. I pulled open the new Arturia V Collection Jupiter 8, and then also Xenology. And I pulled them. They all had that same patch in there. So kind of listened through them. An interesting thing was I thought like just initially, right off the bat, the Tal sounded really great. I mean, it was basically perfect the way that that was set up. And then with the Rolling Cloud one, was like it was okay, it was good, it was pretty close, but it just wasn't quite as sweet sounding. And then the Arturia one was a little bit darker, and I ended up having to adjust some envelope stuff to get it to sound the same. But once I did, it was a little bit warmer and fatter sounding, so I had to make it a little bit brighter. And then the Xenology, it was like in the ballpark, but didn't really have like the weightiness to the sound, the girth. There's something about the filter, and it might have been like the envelope was so much different on it. But there was some other funny stuff there I was trying to figure out on Xenology because was having some problems where there's something else that was modulating the filter that shouldn't have been modulating the filter. I think it was a bug. But with the Roland Cloud one, when I went back to it to compare to the Tal, because the Tal was still just a little better sounding, when I turned up the circuit mod, it got really close. They sounded very close on that same patch because it just kind of made it a little more organic sounding. So I'm glad that they've done this, and I'm looking at, this is the first that they're doing of these ACB synthesizers, so it'd be nice to see the other ones get that circuit mod as well.
I agree.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
yeah,
it's. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to ask you a question. I mean, obviously, you didn't really get a chance to dig in too deeply to determine if these are like really amazing or if it's just so-so.
Well, I mean, if you already like the Roland Cloud ACB stuff, this is just better. So, I thought it sounded pretty good. There are some things that I think have in the last couple of years that have been edging them out, and that they got to catch up. Roland's got to catch up again because, I mean, you already have like the Tal J8, and then the ones that to me, I said before, that are killing it for the Roland sound are the soft tube model 84 and 82. And I did pull open, since I've had Junos, I pulled open the 106 on the Roland Cloud, and then also the soft tube one. I didn't get a chance to check the other ones, but although I think the other ones that I have are like Juno 6 and 60. So played some patches that were my favorite from the hardware, and I'd still give the edge to the soft tube 84 or model 84. That thing sounds really. When I had the 106 and did the big shootout in here with them, the Roland Cloud sounded good, but I couldn't get it dialed in to sound like my particular Juno. Like I said, you can make some really great patches on it, which I've done on the System 8, but man, that 84 got really close. I mean, it was pretty surprising.
Nice.
And it may be that their modeled one their original that they modeled maybe sounded a little more like my original. I don't know, but that one, like when I listened to it, like, yeah, that's the sound.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited about those just because of the weird little circuit knob. I think that if they're already sounding great and we know that, then it's like that's kind of cool. Something that sort of takes it somewhere fast.
Well, I mean, they just redid the manager app, so it seems to be working a little bit better. They've changed some stuff around, and some things are better, some things maybe not so much, but I think it gives us that like the ACB stuff a little more hope that like, wow, something's happening. But it's been a long damn time since they released when did they release the Jupiter 4? I think was that the last one? Was it the Jupiter 4 or the Juno 60? But I would think that's got to be coming up on a year now. I don't know if anybody remembers, but I'm kind of hoping for I'm hoping for the JX8P, but I imagine, Marshall, you might be more interested in the V-Synth or the...
I doubt if they did a V-Synth in the cloud, that'd be awesome. I don't think they'll do that, though. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to see an 8000, JP 8000. Yeah, because they did the JD 800. They've done the XV 5080. I'm just looking at my Roland boxes over here. The 990, but I guess the JD 80, the JD 800 is a 990 kind of basically. So I don't know. I could see them doing a JP 8000 though, maybe. I can't. If they did a V-Synth though, that would be pretty epic.
Yeah, I'd imagine that probably the JX8P is the one that I think I see the most online people requesting, and it's the one that I'm looking for the most. But the V-Synth, the JP 8000, and Jupiter 6 I'm kind of wondering how the Cherry Audio release will affect the order of how they release stuff, because like as Wagyu was mentioning, it's been almost a year since they've released one. They used to release 2 or 3 a year, so that's kind of been a bummer.
Well, then the other thing is, I was just thinking about this. If they do a V-Synth, there's not going to be real D-beams. Like, what are you going to do?
Oh, no.
You know? It's not a V-Synth without D-beams on it.
You're going to have the virtual reality goggles.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Hard stop. Don't do it, Roland.
Yes.
Oh, the humanity.
I just remember they had somebody in the last few years was releasing, like, I'm trying to remember what it is. I'm not going to remember what it was called, but it was something like a ring that had some sort of gyros or something that you could do different motions to affect modulation on a synthesizer. I don't know if...
Yeah, I saw that thing. Yeah. And they demoed it with like some sampled strings or something, and it was kind of cool. So the guy's sitting there, opening filter, doing all the basic stuff, vibrato, whatever, opening filter, LFO. Pretty cool though. There it is. Synthetics got a beat on it.
It should be synthetic.
Genki
is what it is.
Yeah, of course. That's true. Yeah. I mean, it looked like a pretty cool way of getting it done. I don't know. Like at least operating in 3D space like that, if you feel something, coming up in volume, or at least opening a filter or something raising like this, that does feel good. Like that makes sense, rather than, everything is rotary.
So speaking of funny controllers, and I saw a little clip on Instagram where some guy, it looks like it was just like some guy at NAMM that was demonstrating it. So he's kind of dad rocking a guitar, and then he's kind of hopping around, and he's hopping around in oversized Crocs, and these Croc type shoes are like pressure sensitive, and so as he's moving his feet and wiggling them and stomping, it's controlling a wah pedal, instead of using the
let's see, 10 or 15 years from now, I can't wait to see how that product is viewed in the rearview mirror.
Oh boy.
You know what I mean? Like here's the video of the guy doing it, it's just products that just didn't quite make it,
Yeah. Well, maybe just like the D-Beams Forever will have Dad Wah Crocs forever.
Dad Rock Crocs. There it is. Wow.
Well, Aaron won't even talk about it.
That's excellent. Oh, man. That's amazing. Rock
out
with your socks.
Crocs.
And Croc around the clock. Oh, man, the chat is on fire. Those are pretty great. Oh, man. Well, all right. Chat room is alive.
What a little crock.
Mickey says, I think Adrian Ballou did something like that. No doubt. No doubt he did.
Yeah.
No doubt, but he could pull it off. He lives about 3 miles from here. He lives in the same little town that I live in. Chris, are you an Adrian Ballou fan? Just quickly.
I've really only know his stuff from King Crimson.
Yeah.
And he did some great stuff with him. So
yeah.
I think a very talented guy.
Yeah. Right on. Just curious.
So
should we launch into our topic?
Yeah. We got to talk about buying Crocs. So.
Yeah. that's going to be one of those things. But so. It's a hard stop, Marshall says.
Yeah, hard stop.
No.
Hard
Yeah. Now we want to talk about with y'all. We want to talk about buying and selling gear, and like almost not necessarily for the sake of flipping it at all, but like going through gear quickly and how you feel about that. What is your personal philosophy about buying gear and then ending up selling it only to buy other gear that you end up selling, and going through that process? It's a little different from talking about gas or gear acquisition syndrome, in that you're not really trying to just buy everything that pops out. You're really trying to hone down your setup, but as you're doing that, you are ending up buying and selling and buying and selling, and just sort of the roller coaster that is, we thought might make a fun topic to talk with everybody about. So yeah, that's let's just go to Cryss. You want to start off with like your impressions of the topic and how this affects you, and we'll just kind of go around the horn.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started playing guitar, I was given an electric guitar. The Standell that I have, that I told you about, it was lent to me, and a neighbor that's like an uncle built me a fuzz box, and I was rocking out like it was 1965, and I quickly figured out, like, I mean, right away, that like this whole gear thing, I was hooked. And going to this, I remember going to this small music store called Lear's Music in the Inland Empire. And the first time, like crystal clear memories, the first time I played through a pedal board and played all these effects, the first time I played through a tube amplifier, like I remember what guitar I played when I played through that thing, and I remember the pedals that I played, like all these like just really sharp memories. Like I don't remember what shirt I wore yesterday, but I remember that Lake Placid Blue Strat that I played through that PV Classic 50, and and I was like, this is what a tube amp is? Like, oh my gosh, like just real quickly discovered, or even I didn't have a modern amplifier with a distortion channel in it. So the first time I heard distortion I was playing my guitar acoustically on the curb when a neighbor lit me that amp, and that amp only is like clean and tremolo, and so there's not really, it's just clean electric guitar. And neighbor brought over a reel-to-reel tape machine, and my first experiencing of anything that was a effect other than tremolo was he's like, oh yeah, let's plug your guitar into it. And I had these big 70s headphones on with the curly cord, and it's, I don't know, it's like something that looked like a TAC 3340 or something, and he had repaired it, and he's like, yeah, check this out. And he wasn't a musician, but he knew a lot about music stuff. He's like, he cranked the input on this thing, and all of a sudden, like, it was my first taste of distortion. I was like, oh my gosh, I need this in my life. I must have distortion. And then right from there, I was still learning guitar and all that, but the next goal was like, I've got to have distortion, and I've got to have a wah pedal and all this stuff, and it, And so he ended up building me a fuzz pedal, and then I bought a wah pedal after that, and a distortion pedal, and it just took off from there. And I knew like every aspect of it I needed to like tweak and tinker, and like I saved up and bought an American Standard Strat, and the next thing was like, I need a humbucker in the bridge, like I need something powerful in that bridge position, and then changing pickups out, and it started spiraling. Now, one thing that was great in the 90s when I was doing this is that 60s and 70s gear were Croc 3340.
That's hilarious.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
That a lot of vintage gear was really cheap. It just hadn't skyrocketed yet. Unfortunately, I wasn't into synthesizers yet, so like I couldn't have picked up a Mini Moog or something like that. But I started getting, like these old pedals and amps and, all sorts of stuff, and like just it became my desire. I bought like a car for $800. It was a '63 Chevy 2. And part of the thing, I was like, I was going to fix it up, but then like I never ended up fixing up because I just kept buying gear. Like, oh, I got to have a Paul Reed Smith mix, and I got to have this pedal, or I got to get this kind of amp, and it just, so on and so on. And so, long story short, I quickly discovered like I don't have money, and when I was teens, early 20s, and I was like, oh, how do I get this stuff? And then it became I've got to sell something. And so those were back in the days before the internet, and you would call a phone number and put an ad out in a newspaper like the Music Recycler, and some stranger would call you, and you'd meet up and you'd sell them a pedal or you'd buy something, and in those days. And it's funny because when I moved to where I am now, like there was one particular guy, like he kept calling me, and I kept finding gear, and it kept ended up being this guy Victor, and we became really good friends. We've been friends for, gosh, like 23 years now, I think, just because we met through the Music Recycler, and we kept trading gear. It's like finally after like 4 or 5 times, like, hey, why don't you just hold on to my number? Let's just give each other a call, because we keep doing stuff through the Music Recycler, and we should just get together every once in a while. We can trade stuff. And I had a few friends that would trade gear with me. And then, once by the late 90s, I was starting to fix gear, and that became an avenue that I'd buy old broken stuff, a lot of like electro-harmonic stuff and old amps and whatnot, and I would start fixing them, and that would give me money for gear. But that's kind of that. I mean, really just been the total addict about gear, and because money is not grown on trees, like that became part of the process, is that I wanted to experience every new thing and everything that's fun. The boutique market with guitar stuff started really in like the mid 90s, maybe early, but really the mid 90s I think is when it really started taking off. And so it's like all of a sudden, like there's so many things, everything just opened up, and I wanted to taste and experience everything, and to do that it meant flipping gear, and that's kind of what drove it for many years for me.
Did you ever, like, it's kind of what you're saying, but did you ever get into like getting on eBay and flipping gear like that specifically just to to make a buck, and then end up with some cash that you could actually buy something that you actually wanted? Did you ever like play that game?
Yeah, I did a lot of like fixing stuff to get a profit, because I could get things for really cheap that were broken. And then as far as parts and stuff, usually that wasn't too expensive. It was the know-how and the time spent doing it. So those are things I could do on my free time if I were working, whatever job I was working at the time. I could do that on the side, and that would be for I could pay the bills by working at a grocery store or being a musician or whatever. But I needed gear money, and that's kind of how I got the gear money. There would be some times where I would just see something come up on eBay and go like, that's ridiculously cheap. I'm going to grab it, and then I'd play it for a bit and either trade it or sell it for a profit. But mostly, a lot of what I did was repair. But I did try, like, from eBay on, I try to buy smart. And so if you can wait and you can have the self-discipline, then you just wait and you keep things on a search, and then you wait till you see it at the price that you want to buy it for, or you submit offers, so that at least if I sell it, I can get my money out of it, try to at least break even on it.
And then Marshall, what about you? Did you ever like flip gear for cash like in the earlier days,
Yeah, so in the year 2006, that's when I bought my first synth, and it was a Korg MS-2000. Bought it at Guitar Center, and I didn't know how to use it, so I took it back. And I got a SH-201. And yeah, those days I was young. I didn't have money, and so what I would do is I would make a little video, put it on YouTube, and then make an eBay listing, and I would try and sell what I had. Like in that case, it was a SH201, and I'd post the video in the description of the auction or whatever. And that's how my YouTube channel actually started. Was when I'd go to sell something, I'd make a little video and I'd put it on YouTube and post it on the eBay listing. And some of those got like hundreds of thousands of views.
Wow. So
I was like, and I didn't even think anything of it. I didn't really start doing YouTube for real until like 2017. But that's what I used to do. So I remember I'd see stuff in the shop that I liked. I didn't do a lot of trading, but it was mostly like I'd get something, I'd try it out, and if I liked it, I'd try and hold on to it as long as I could. But sometimes you had to sell some stuff to pay some bills, which happened. That's why with the Moog Little Fatty, I think I've owned like 4 of those. And I'd buy it, I'd sell it, and I'd want another one, and I'd buy it again and sell it for whatever reason and buy another one. Yep. So, yeah. So once I started earning a good living, I've been able to retain more equipment, obviously. I kind of have a ridiculous amount now, but so I don't do a lot of selling anymore. But in the early days, yeah, that's how I was able to get a hold of other synthesizers more specifically. Was selling off some older stuff and trying to buy some new stuff or other stuff that I saw that I thought I wanted.
It's an interesting thing, and it's a way to get there, right? You can build up enough cash by doing that to actually get kind of more of your goals, and so it's just another way to get there, I suppose. And me, use most of my money obviously coming from money I made as a musician. Then you don't want to have to sell the tools of your trade, which is where your money's coming from, to then try to get other stuff. But at the same time, you're sort of driven to, because to some extent, you have to be current in what instruments you're using and the gear you're using and whatever. And if you've got older stuff, then you may have to obviously offload that just to get newer stuff, and then you want the old stuff again. You're going to miss that. You're going to miss the old instruments at some point, but you just don't. It's a juggling act. You just don't have another way around it until you get enough cash flow going, or enough instruments where you can kind of feel all right about. All right, I can say goodbye to this one, and that's all right. But as long as I still have this set of guys here, I'm okay, So it's so weird, and especially when your money's coming from music, you just don't ever want to sell anything. And I think one of my things most recently was I sold my Moog grandmother in order to, because I have a Moog matriarch, and they kind of do a really similar thing. You can get them to sound pretty similar, and so I felt like in my rig that was the closest thing to redundancy that I had, and if there was a place where I might want to get rid of something, it would have been that. So I did, and as soon as it went out the door, man, I was like, I shouldn't have done that.
Shouldn't have sold your grandmother.
That's always that's the running joke. I mean, anything you say about Granny, but I sold it because I really wanted to see what the Hydrasynth was about, because I had redundancy in the Moogs with Matriarch and with Granny, but then Hydrasynth was a digital synth, completely different timbre and set of variables and funness to goof with in my setup. So I'm like, that will really be a nice contrast to what I have compared to the two Moogs, which can kind of do the same thing. So I did hate to see old Granny go, but the Hydrasynth has been really fun and very different. Yeah.
And it's being a digital synth that probably complements the analog stuff. But I was going to ask you,
it's a contrast.
in terms of the modular stuff, do you have a lot of churn there?
So
Because
now you've opened, the virtual
there it
Pandora's
is.
box.
There it is.
Yeah, that's absolutely it, because they're small enough pieces. They're very unique, or very specified in what they do, and so you can, oh God, here we go, right? So yeah, I mean, I have a few pieces of gear now that are, about 4 or 5 pieces of modular gear that are back in the boxes, sitting on a shelf, that I need to figure out what to do with, and then I have a couple that are in the rack that I just don't use. But you kind of don't know that, even with the benefit of having YouTube demos and whatnot. You kind of don't know how it's going to work for you until you get it and throw it in place with your other modules and see how they interact and how you use them. And that's where it gets like, oh, time to sell this one. And it's just sitting there. I've got like this thing here is Stooges, it's called, and it's just like it's 3 chaotic LFOs, and because the periodic LFO gets a little old, right? I mean, no matter what you do, it's still going to have a repetitive, every so often, whatever period, it's going to repeat itself, right? So the thing that intrigued me was things that were more chaotic, or that wouldn't necessarily repeat. And so I tried this piece of gear, and it's all right. It doesn't still do. It's still not as reckless as I want. But it's it's just another step in that direction. But again, you can't really know that without getting it and throwing it into your setup. So the modular gear stuff is very dangerous, because there's a million different pieces, and it's all how it works for you and in your setup. So yeah. Marshall, to answer that question, yeah, I've taken way more risks with modules than like just a straight up hardware synth.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I've noticed that with modular and also with pedals, it just ends up being a lot easier to deal with if you have to ship something. Boxes are small, shipping's cheap. Even though the other person's paying for it, just like the way that you deal with it is a lot easier. And there's less things that are going to happen to a pedal being shipped across the country than, my gosh, I worry if I have to ship an amp across country. Things can happen much easier, and so it does make it easier in that that ecosystem to be able to flip stuff. Plus the cost involved with it. You might be $100, it might be $300 or something, but it's not really a big deal. But when it comes to like selling a 61 key synthesizer, or a high-end tube amp or something like that, then it's starting to get stressful, at least for me, because then on my end I can do everything that I can, so I pack really well. We're not talking about putting newspaper in a box. Like, I bubble wrap everything to hell, or use foam corners when I need to use those, and everything, so that on my end I know that it'll arrive okay, so long as they don't, drop it off the top of a building or something, But the part of buying and selling that really gets to bug me after a while is the other person. Because sometimes it's great. Like, they're easy, they communicate, they leave feedback. Yeah. Or if they're shipping it, they ship it, and I get wow, this is how I would pack it. And they shipped it the same day or the next day, and it's like, wow, this is great. This has been an awesome experience. But then you always have the random jackass that, doesn't know how to pack something. Like, it's like, oh, I just pulled the synthesizer out of a box, a single layer box with newspaper crumpled up around it. Like, is it any wonder things are broken? Like, oh, of course they're going to break with this. That was easily avoidable. And then the person's upset, no, you broke it, and all this kind of stuff. And, Reverb or eBay or whatever, they'll take care of you, but then you have to go through this process, and you have to ship it back, and all this kind of hassle. That's really played on me, really like bothers me now, that I'm really starting to try to, when I'm looking at gear, I'm like, is this worth the effort to get this piece of gear? Is this really going to make a difference in my rig? because if something goes wrong, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, why I'm doing this, I
Well,
don't know if you guys experience that.
I had a situation when I bought my Nord Wave. I bought it used on Reverb. The guy sent it in a soft case with a little bit of cardboard around it. It was duct taped together. And I was like,
Oh, gosh.
oh my God. It was okay. That it arrived fine, but I told the dude, I was like, hey, next time put a little more effort into the shipping because this could have been really bad. But yeah, so, and I remember I sold a Korg Radius, just the rack portion once, and I shipped it in the box it came in. But the way it was packed, one of the rack ears like punctured through the box, and it got bent. So I was like, oh crap. I felt bad for the guy. I think we worked something out to where he didn't send it back or anything. But after that, I also started paying much better attention to how things were packed, because that's like the worst thing, right? You buy something that's kind of expensive and it shows up and it's damaged because somebody didn't pack it very well.
Yeah.
I'm finding that as I read auctions, like I see some good, or whatever, Reverb listings. I get probably most of my gear on Reverb now. I'm finding like if it's like a half sentence and no capitals or something, it's like great module, stuff like that, and they don't have very many pictures, or it's still in their rack or whatever. I'm just like, nope, I don't care if it's a good price. Pass. And if you get the guy that's like, hey, I want to be a good seller and the type of person I would want to buy for, and this is how I pack it. I try to get it sent out to you in this many days, and I don't want you to have problems. So this is going the extra mile. Here's exact condition of it. Here's something you might not see in the photos. Here's a whole bunch of photos, that's done with a decent, like not from a camera phone from 2006, like some of these people. But like if you put zero effort into it, I'm not buying it. And the other thing is, like on forums, so I used to buy and sell on the Gear Page a lot, which the Gear Page is the biggest. It's not bigger than Gearspace. That's, I think, is, as far as I know, the biggest music forum. But the Gear Page is by far the biggest guitar forum. And so there's tons of people selling there, but they're the whole thing now is so many people, and they're like, this is, $500 PayPal, family and friends. Yeah, you're the seller. You're supposed to eat the cost. You're screwing PayPal out of their money. And if I'm stupid enough to send you money, PayPal friends and family, and we're not actually friends, there's no guarantees. If something bad happens, they just go, you're screwed,
Right.
Screw off. I don't have to do anything because PayPal won't back up that transaction. They said, that was your friend, so you didn't pay for our services. We're not going to help you out with this, and you're out the money. And I see so many people that are like, well, he seemed like a nice guy online. It's like, how do you know? You don't.
Well, that's one of the ways that one of the ways that I avoid, or want to avoid doing too much buying and selling, especially the selling, especially secondhand, like we're talking about. Yeah, it's just, you just don't know who you're dealing with, and you get people that jump on there if you're selling, and they're, hey, so you still got this? Yeah, cool. Like, that looks really cool. Right. Well, it's for sale. So what are we talking about here? That it looks cool, or are you interested? Yeah, I'm interested, sort of. Yeah, it's cool. Okay. Well, but I'm like $10 short. Like, I just had a guy tell me that when I was selling this studio electronics module. Yeah, I'm like $10 short of what you're asking. So I'll get, this is after about 4 or 5 back and forths. And then he's like, yeah, well, I'll get back to you when I can, scrounge up the money. And I'm thinking, man, like $10? Can you borrow 10 from your buddy,
Yeah. If
I mean,
if
I don't know.
Is making the difference, you probably shouldn't be buying that thing.
Yeah. It was just, it says that kind of stuff is so annoying in terms of just like what it takes out of your hide just because you want to sell a module to try something else. So that really is a discourager for me. It keeps me from doing too much of that for sure. Who's got time for that? But apparently there are a lot of people out there just doing it.
Yeah, when I would sell on the gear page, because it's not an auction or a listing like Reverb, people will message you, and it's just like any other, KVR or anything else, but like, hey, I started getting a lot of people, quite a while ago, they're like, hey, could you hold it for me? And in 3 days, I'll pay you for it, and it's a done deal. I probably held something for like a day or two for a couple people, and after that I was like, nope. Hey man, if you don't have the money, I've got it. It's first come first serve.
Yeah.
I'm not hanging out whether you do it or not. No, just if you have money, I'll sell it right now. The only time I made an exception on that is like if somebody were willing to make a non-refundable, like significant portion of it. If they offered me, like, hey, I'll send, whatever, half the money now, and they can't take, if they send it to me and like, here, I'll just send you the payment for it, and in 2 days I'll have the other $100 for it. Like, all right, I'll take a risk on this because you got some money that you're willing to put up front and you're willing to lose. So I guess, but yeah, not holding anything for anybody anymore.
Yeah.
I started trying to go the local route before I hit up the eBays or the Reverbs, just because I feel like it's kind of nice because if you can find somebody local, you can go and usually they'll let you come and make sure everything works. You can get a better look at everything, and then you don't have to worry about shipping.
I think we're kind of lucky in that, I'm in Nashville, you're in Tampa, basically, right?
Yeah.
And Cryss is basically in, Orange County in Southern California. So that's a real viable thing. I think if you live in like, Lexington, Kentucky or someplace, I don't think too many people are going to want to review your module or something, So I think we're pretty fortunate because, that's what happened with the grandmother that I sold. It was local. I'm not shipping this. I'm not doing that. I'm not even so sure I want to do this, So it's got to be easy. And somebody came in and snatched it right up. And I was like, okay, well, then it is gone. But in that case, I love the hydrosynth. So there you go.
Let me ask you, for local sales in 2023, what do you use? Is it Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, forums?
Yeah, I use the Facebook Marketplace. There's a local one for Nashville. Mm-hmm. Nashville musician gear trader, and so immediately that's getting in front of the right people and a bunch of them. But still, like, kind of the weirdo because it's like modular, Euro-rack gear or something. It's not like
if you're selling a telly or a tube screamer, you'd probably be all right.
yeah, or drums or pretty much just any traditional instrument, especially just basic combo band instrument like that. But yeah, you put up some module and it's not the first thing that people want to snatch up, but at least it does get seen by a lot of people, and that is changing a lot. We got a new viewer in the chat tonight, Mickey Gutierrez, and he's a modular hound, and he's a sax player, and he's way off into synthesizers, and he's here in town, So nice. There you go. There's somebody that's a little not playing guitar kind of person, guitar or drums.
You need a few more of them in Nashville. Oh, well, that'd be a good time to plug your show that you're doing too.
The residency?
Yeah, your residency.
Yeah. I was able to start a residency it's one Sunday a month. It's the last Sunday of every month for electronic music here in Nashville. And so there's a bunch of people that are actually interested in being part of it and attending it and hanging out and playing it as well. So it's really cool. The response I've got has been great. Mickey's been definitely one of those people. He's going to play on one of the shows, and it's just been really, really cool to throw that out there and see the response has been fantastic. So I'm doing it the last Sunday of every month. I'm going to host it. I won't play on everyone, obviously. I mean, I'm doing it for the community, but I have a handshake deal basically with the club that will continue it as long as people are coming out. So that the first official show that I have for it is actually this Sunday, the 30th, the last Sunday. So I'm not on that, but some great artists are on it, and I'm just super excited to be able to do this for the community and to see just how big the electronic music community actually is now here in Nashville, because it didn't used to be very huge. Yeah, there it is. So I'm calling it Synthy Sunday School because we're going to Sunday school. So yeah, it's cool, and it's just a great hang, and everybody's into it. It's a free show, and I'm going to have 4 artists on, curating 4 different artists for every Sunday that we're live, and it's just going to be a blast. So anyway, yeah, there it is, Synthy Sunday School. If you're in the Nashville area, come check it out, or if you're just passing through, come check it out. It's a lot of fun. There are some really great artists that I was completely unaware of that are here, so it's really fun. It's helping to expose the community and just kind of help everybody network, and I don't know, just to hear the music. It's so cool. So that's my little baby there, Synthy Sunday School.
Well, hopefully we can get you a sponsorship from Dead Rock Crocs.
Yeah, I hope so. That would put it over the top. I mean, at least with a light show built in would be great for the Crocs. If you could just control the lights.
Oh,
with
like
them,
in
that
the
would
holes in the Crocs, like have lights coming out of there?
Yes, yeah, like kind of lasers jetting out, and depending on the dance moves you do while you're doing your...
A bunch of D-beams. Perfect.
I mean, toe LEDs. Yeah, I mean, it's really actually just been it's been a blast. I can't believe how many people have reached out to me and just said they wanted to be part of it. So I'm excited, man. Like, it's a cool thing to be part of, or to spearhead. That's hilarious. Toe LEDs.
So what has been like the primary motivation for you guys when you feel like I've got to get something new?
Just depends. I mean, recently for me, it's been the reissues that the companies have been doing. So like the OBX8, the Prophet 10. Those have been good. Some of the Behringer stuff I like. I like the drum machines that they've been putting out. So like the RD9, RD8, and then something just unique and cool like the Osmos. Like, there's nothing like it, so I wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally the inspiration that you get from a new piece of gear is just amazing. You know, when you guys first get a new synth that you love, and you sit there and you just start playing through the presets, and you've already, by preset number 12, you've already written like the basics for like 3 or 4 tunes. That's when bam, that is gold right there, man. So inspiration for me is definitely one of the reasons to get a new piece of gear, or like you're saying, Marshall, or like if it's super attractive in a vintage or traditional kind of older instrument way. The OBX8, that was totally that for me. I mean, yeah. I knew it would be both. I knew it would be inspirational, but also like you feel like you're owning a piece of history. It's like I'm getting that.
I think I've always really enjoyed the kind of the taste, like trying to have a sample of everything. and there was been some points where it was not really a fruitful thing, and uh, particularly during the time where I play a lot of like cleaner amps, like old vintage Fenders and stuff. Like, oh, that was great, but I'd be going through overdrive pedals, and then there'd be hardly any difference between one to the next, and be like, well, this one's the new hot thing, and I got to check it out to see if it is, 0.8% better than the one that I have now, and you'd go through all this hassle to do that. There ended up being a forum. This is years ago, like at least 15 years ago, I think, called Free Stomp Boxes. That there was a bunch of people that were into building and modding and stuff, pedals, and so they started reverse engineering, these pedals that would come out, and so. A lot of these boutique guys were just hand building overdrive pedals, and they would goop up the circuit boards so you couldn't see what was in there. It was a secret. And then everybody would get in a lather about this stuff, and they're like, oh, this thing, man, this is just really, it's dynamic, and it just has this tone, and it's just the perfect thing. And they're just, the hordes, like the forums, they would just spiral out of control, snowball. And people would be buying these things up, and this one's a hand-painted limited edition and all this kind of stuff. And so the great thing is that the kind of counterweight to all that is this group of guys that were had started this forum, like, let's figure out what's in these pedals, and then see really what's to it. And so there was one big pedal that came out that there's a whole bunch of them, but there was one in particular that I ended up reverse engineering. Like, well, this is just a modified Tube Screamer, and then we started finding tons and tons of these modified Tube Screamer. Ibanez Tube Screamer is like a very classic overdrive pedal. It came out in the late 70s, and Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. That's the Tube Screamer, and so it was a very popular sound for a lot of people. But these guys would go in and they'd change a couple resistors and capacitors, or put a socketed IC so you could change it, and it was all derivative of everything else, and if you put a fancy paint job on it, people would buy it. And so these people started exposing them for what was happening. They're like, this is just this with a fancier paint job and a couple different capacitors. And that ended up kind of being helped me to realize, like, yeah, a lot of the stuff that I'm going after is just small variations, and I feel like because everybody's talking about it that I'm missing out. I mean, the FOMO on it, right? That like I want to try this thing that everybody else is talking about, and so I've gotten out of that cycle with pedals. But where I didn't realize I got into it again a few years ago was with plugins, and then it's like, ooh, this plugin, oh, I got to check that out. And the great thing about plugins is they're generally a lot cheaper, so you can end up picking them up. Like nothing, you don't have to, there's nothing that's sitting around taking up space. It's just all on your computer. And right. So not to say that those things are all derivative of one another. They aren't. There's some really spectacular plugins and plugins I really love, but then I'm finding myself more and more now going, why do I want to buy this? And trying to ask myself those questions. And it's been really good because I've cut down the amount of my buying by a significant amount. Even, I would say like in earnest, I started last year, but even comparing this year to last year, this year, like my plugin purchases have gone like probably down by 80% or something. It's way down because I'm kind of questioning things like, oh, I want to try that. I want to hear that. Now, the great thing with plugins that a lot of them offer demos. So the clever thing is that if I hate the hassle of it, like, oh, I got, installation's fine, but then do they have an uninstaller, or do I have to go and look for the files on my computer to dig all that stuff out? But I do try to make the effort now to demo stuff, because most of the time I demo, I go, oh, I was just wanting something new. I just wanted to taste some new dish, and or people were talking about it. But with my ears, like I'm not enjoying this as much as I thought I would, so I don't need to buy this. And that's been a wonderful thing, because it's really cut my spending down a lot. And so I'm trying to have some, more. I'm reviewing my strategies as far as gear buying, so I don't just keep buying gear for the sake of buying gear. And the other thing I'm like with synthesizers, like I've really slowed down on synthesizers, and that like I haven't dug as deep onto some of the stuff that I have now, the later things that I purchased, that that every time I come to it's like Moog One. Oh yeah, I've been, I've got so many hours on that thing that so like I can say like I've got my money out of it, and I love it, but then on some of my other synthesizers, I would say like the Hydrasynth in particular, like every time I go and I'm looking at another a synthesizer, I'm like, wait a second, like the Hydrasynth could do probably most of what that other thing can do, and I have spent time with it, and I have made patches and done this stuff, but there's so much more to go on it that I'm like, I've not mined the depths of it yet. And so when I'm looking at spending another $2,000 on something else, I'm like, you know what? I probably need to work with this a little more. This would be a great opportunity, or with software in general. Like as I said, the other week I was talking about going through Logic and making sure I've learned all the stuff that I need to learn about it. So that's been wonderful, and that's been bringing me a lot of joy rather than buying stuff with like learning to use the stuff that I have more. And that's not been a problem for me. It's usually I like the way I like to do it, spend a lot of time with things. But with the sudden inrush of synthesizers over the last 5 years, like I didn't catch myself getting into a cycle that I was in many years ago.
Yeah, it's so important to spend the time with the gear that you have before you start jumping. And I'm guilty of it, definitely. Oh, that piece of gear looks really cool. I need that only because it's going to do something different for me than the others, and that's going to inspire me, and that's going to cause me to write more, and that's going to help me, get to my goals faster. When that's not really the deal at all. Like I've got synths that I don't even know half of what they do. I do. It's not really true, but like I don't know under the hood how I sound through them. You know what I mean? And the Hydrasynth is one of those. There's something about it. It has a lot of depth, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard to feel like, oh yeah, I've gotten all in and out of that synth. I know every little bit of that because it's so deep.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff these days is pretty deep like that, right?
Yeah.
Even some of the software, like Omnisphere, I don't know half what that can do.
Yeah, well, I just got Pigments about 3 or 4 months ago.
Oh yeah,
and so that's got some depth to it, Mm-hmm. Wow. So I don't have that mastered at all, but I wanted to get it because everybody was talking about it, and again, it's like, oh, that's seductive. Piglets, yeah. Sorry, I guess I called it the wrong thing. It's
piglets.
It's piglets, yeah. Piglets with crops.
I think it's a prerequisite though to have to master the equipment before you buy new stuff, but it is nice to get a handle on it at least, and see what you can do with the stuff you have. For sure.
Yeah.
And I wasn't meaning to make it sound like that is a hard fast rule, or that's something you should always do. Like I don't think that myself. I mean, there's times that you buy something for a flavor that you need, and you don't necessarily have to go all in on a piece of gear to do that. Like there are some things in my collection that's like I get it out when I need that color and when I need that flavor. Right. And it doesn't have to be the thing that I'm the master of. There are things, I mean, we have to pick and choose, especially in times like these where gear is so abundant and relatively speaking very cheap, that we find ourselves in rooms, surrounded by gear. And I think, was it you and I that were talking, Tim, that before the show, and one of the things that I noticed, like, I mean, with my guitar and bass rig stuff, I mean, there's like, 5 minutes of like, oh, this is something new, and I'll play it and like, oh, okay. Yeah, I know. All right, I'm done. I already got this thing all figured out. But when it comes to recording and software and Logic and plugins and then, complex synthesizers, those things take a lot more work because even though it might be, similar type of synthesis, like the workflow can be radically different.
Right.
And the way you find the sweet spots of a synthesizer takes a lot more time than it does on a guitar amplifier. And so I do find like, I can bring in guitar gear and it's like no problem. Like no time spent. Like, all right, I got this. I understand it. No sweat. And that's where I'm getting like with software and synthesizers. Like, okay, if you're buying like a mini Moog or a Sim or something, like that's not going to take that much time to figure out. Like, how that works. But if you're getting a Hydrasynth or an Iridium or Quantum or Moog One or something like that, those things, if you want to master those things, those are going to take a long time. But they can be a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah, those are worth the time.
Yeah.
That's worth the investment, without a doubt.
But it is easier to add color, I think, in the guitar world versus a synth world. Although there are some areas in the synth world where it is easier. Like, you got your modular setup and you're like, well, I've got a 12 decibel filter and I'm going to get a 24 decibel filter. It works the same way. It just has a different sound. Like you don't have to relearn that piece of gear. But, if you're switching from, Yuhi Zebra to Pigments, like both of those take a lot of work to really mine the depths of.
Or you can go old school and get a DX7. And if anyone ever, I think, Brian Eno's like the only one who really knows how to use one of those. Really mastered
Danny
light.
Fernandez.
The guy that designed it.
Like, so, yeah, I feel bad for anyone and to put their whole soul into one of those things. Jesus.
There should be a whole suicide prevention hotline or something for
I
people that try to
program
DX7s. Oh man, I can't. I don't know. Help me. Talk me off the cliff.
Well, we got anything else to say about that before we start winding down?
I think we crushed that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all, kind of guilty of doing it for lighter reasons and for actual, justified reasons. Sometimes you just want to do it for the hell of it, right? And sometimes it's because I really need this thing, and maybe it just didn't work. Maybe it's just not for you. So it's a pretty interesting topic.
Just do what you want.
Do your thing.
Do what you want. You want to buy stuff, buy it. You want to sell it, sell it. Do what you want.
Yeah, that's it. That's the ultimate right there. Make yourself happy.
There you go.
Yeah, there's, when it happens and it happens right, and you get that piece of gear that just brings you a lot of joy. I mean, there's so much fulfillment in that. Like Tim was saying earlier, when that synth or when that guitar or whatever, immediately music flows out from it and it inspires things, then man, that's to me the greatest. Like when I get a good new guitar, and it's a good guitar, you're like, man, songs start flowing out of it. You just can't help but play it. And it's like, it's still the rest of my rig is the same. Nothing's changed with the guitar. And it might be, I've got a couple struts. It might be, just the same model as something else I have, but it's a little bit different. And all of a sudden you find these things in it that just start bringing the music out. That's great.
Yeah, that's what you want right there.
Well, what do you guys got going on? Anything fun for the next week?
Osmos, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be, you're going to have to give us a little update on it, obviously, as the weeks go by, as we do more episodes. You're going to have to fill us in how it's evolving.
Yeah, next week I'll get it set up to where I can maybe do a little demo on the show.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. I'm really tempted. That's, on my list of what I think I want.
Mm-hmm.
But
cool. And it'll work with other things too. So you're not beholden to the internal synth engine there. You can use it with some of the plugins, like your Piglets. Right?
Yeah, like a Piglets.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just be curious to see how friendly it is that it'll play with those other things, because that would be that would factor into whether or not I want to go to the trouble of getting something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be our poster child for Osmos.
Yeah, Tim, what's up next for you, man?
I'm just cramming to finish this horror short that I've been doing the soundtrack for, and it's supposedly due on Monday, and I'm not done. I got a ways to go. It's pretty much been consuming all my spare time, whatever. So we'll see. That's got to be done, and then the Cynthy Sunday School. The first one is this Sunday, so I'll be wrangling that together and going down to the club and hosting that. So that's kind of my immediate future.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm not doing anything exciting, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So I've been going through Logic and tutorials and things, and some things like, watching through these videos like, oh yeah, I know how to do this, but because a DAW is so complex that there's so many things that you realize that there's these little corners that you haven't discovered, or stupid easy shortcuts that you've been doing things the hard way for so long. Yeah. This. So I've been doing that and just using that as an opportunity to play and to create and use new techniques. So I've got a project open that I'm working on, a song, and then as I'm going through the series of videos, I'm applying those techniques as after I watch the video, just to make sure that it's getting in here, or taking notes on anything I need to take notes on. So that's a lot of fun, and that's keeping me busy, and I don't have too much more planned. Been playing a lot of guitar in the evenings, which has been fun, and now that I feel like I still have some loss of strength in my left hand, but things are feeling like are coming back, and I feel like I'm playing guitar more like I play guitar, so that's been a good feeling. And of course,
great.
Playing keys it's not as big of a difference with keys because I don't play keys as well as guitar, but so that's what I've been up to. And last thing, Tim, you want to tell us what's happening next week?
What is happening next week? Don't you? You caught me on that one.
We're having Paul Vo on.
Is that Paul, or is that the following week? I think it is next week. Well, okay, yeah. Okay. Paul Vo then is going to be our guest coming up, and I guess it is next week. Paul is an inventor and musician / inventor, mostly inventor, friend of mine that I met when he was he had his office in Moog in Asheville, North Carolina, and he was working on some various patents that Moog was interested in helping to produce. And so I think it was, don't quote me on dates here, we'll get it from Paul, but somewhere in the mid-2000s, 2006 maybe, or something like that, he invented the Moog guitar, which was a guitar that had, through various magnetic inductions of the strings, could have various harmonics brought out, various sustain and decay times for all the different strings. And they did go through with it. They did put it out, and it just didn't catch on because guitar players are very gatekeepers, I would say, in a lot of ways of, if it's not a tube thing in a Tele or a Strat, then a lot of them, they don't want to see some sort of wizardry going on with guitars. They want to keep it very much down, like it goes like this. So anyway, I mean, he's also was instrumental in starting the company QSC, which does power amps and many other things in the audio world. He's working on new technology, which he's going to share some with us, which is also, again, kind of a electroacoustic thing for guitars. So Paul's a fascinating guy. And he's just going to be a blast to talk to. He knows so much, and we have so many things in common in terms of our audience and what he does and what he's up to.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to talking with him then. So I guess that'll be it. If you guys can remember, hit the like button and share it if you like it. Tell your friends. Don't tell your family that you're watching this. Anyways, you all take care. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.